Today we have 8 books to talk about, and I have a lot of thoughts on a couple of them, so I'm really excited to get into today's video. If you're returning, thank you so much and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Carly and I make reading journal videos where we talk about the books that I read in each month and I show you how I put together all of my journal pages. Back in May of this year, actually, I pulled this old Archer&Olive A5 notebook off my shelf and decided to start a reading journal in it. I decided that I wanted to start with January books and journal my way through the whole year. So in some ways we're playing catch up, trying to reach the month that I'm currently in, but I'm not rushing myself. I'm enjoying the process of journaling at a comfortable pace and revisiting all of the books that I read this year. I do still hope to reach the end of the year at an appropriate time though, so that I can journal in 2025 as the months pass instead of a few months later. In that vein, I'm sorry this video has taken quite a while to get up. You can see by the runtime that this is longer than most of my other videos, so I hope that you're watching this with a snack, or maybe you're journaling with me, or watching while falling asleep, which is mostly what I tend to do. This one took me a while longer to film and edit, and I did some traveling and had some birthdays and got a little bit sick last month, so that's why it's been over a month since the last one. The next few I'm hoping to pop out a bit quicker, but we'll see how that goes. Let's talk about the month that we are on now, though. We are focusing on May today, and for this cover spread, I took inspiration from the full moon once again, which this month is called the flower moon, for obvious reasons if you live in the Northern Hemisphere. I wanted to use this beautiful bookshop cafe sticker covered in plants and flowers from Book Babe Designs as the main focal point. The challenge here, though, was that I had a fully pink spread in April as well, but since April had very cool toned pinks, I just tried to keep it to warm tones for May so that I could have a little distinction between the two. Aside from the Book Babe Designs sticker, I'm also using all of this ephemera from Journal Say, and the flower stickers are from Amazon. And as I was working on the spread, I got inspired to sort of lean into the fairy tale storybook idea for the theme, so I pulled out these cloud stickers from Leela Journals and decided to try to make the bookstore look like it was maybe floating in the sky kind of thing. So I did that, and then now I'm just stamping the name of the month and the name of the full moon here, and then I'll move on to the right side where I also pulled a lot of inspiration from a storybook fairy tale vibe. Starting out first, I'm pulling this frame sticker also from Leela Journals, and it's sort of this I don't know, Russian doll and type thing where it's a frame inside a frame inside a frame. And so I just grabbed the largest one and smacked it right in the middle of the page, and I'll work within that for the spread. And then next, the thing I'm probably the most excited about is getting to use these stickers from Once More with Love. I have had these stickers for, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 years. They are these fairy tale storybook accordion stickers where you fold them back and forth, and it turns into a little book. And they were originally meant for a vertical style planner, and I kind of stopped planning that way quite a few years ago. And so I have kind of just held on to a lot of my stickers from that era of my planning hobby. And this is one of the sticker sheets that I've held on to and been hoping to find a way to use it. And this was, in my opinion, probably the perfect way for me to use it. So since I read 8 books this month, and these stickers allow for 4 pages, I guess you could say, I thought it would be perfect to use these to write down which books I read in the month. I didn't think that they looked very good just with a white background, so I held on to them on the sticker page for a second after I folded them up, and I decided to put down this pink textured scrapbook paper underneath the frame sticker so that I could give myself a little bit of a background to work with, and so that it didn't look so plain. Then I decided to pull in this bow sticker and stick it up top. This is from Fifi Puffs, which is a super cute name, on Etsy, and it's from her Coquette Bows sticker sheet. I don't know why I didn't show the sticker sheet in the shot. I'm sorry about that. And I threw in some washi tape at the end here to just make it all tie together, and some book stickers from Leela Journals as well. And I ended up with this kind of very soft, feminine looking cover spread. So I'm pretty happy with how my cover spread ended up, and I'm excited to jump into talking about our books now. So first up, I want to mention that the first 3 books in this month are all blue covers, and I don't have that many blue stickers, so I kind of spread the blue stickers that I do have across these pages. So I apologize that it might be a similar theme for 4 pages in a row basically, but it's not too much of the video, I hope, and I am going to talk about the books individually, obviously, so it won't all be exactly the same, I guess, but the colors and the theming might be very similar. And you can see here that the main blue sticker sheet that I'm going to be using is from Marigona Suli, and it's this like witchy blue and pink themed sticker sheet, and I have a couple of different sheets that have this theme, and there are a couple ones that are like very winter focused, and I tried to avoid those, but this one is perfect for the first couple of books we're going to talk about. And the first of those books is Go Hex Yourself by Jessica Clare. This book is about Reggie, who answers an ad for a job in the paper, and she thinks that she's applying for the company that develops her favorite card game, I guess, but instead she's actually applying to be a familiar for a real witch. The witch in the story has a nephew named Ben, and he immediately dislikes Reggie, and she immediately supposedly dislikes him as well. So it's kind of this enemies to lovers romance set in like this fantastical, magical setting, but the main character doesn't believe in magic until well into the book. This was a right down the middle, like meh romance for me. I thought that Ben was pretty unnecessarily mean to Reggie, which made it hard for me to like him moving forward. The cat was a really creepy character. He ended up being a human in cat form and was very oddly creepy towards Reggie, and it was pretty gross. I think that there were overall too many creepy scenes of people and cats watching each other without consent, and also I had no idea the entire time that this was basically Raylo fanfic, but I found that out on Goodreads, and I don't think I would normally care if the book was good, but this one wasn't very good, and so the fanfic aspect of it kind of showed a bit more, which again, fan fiction is not the problem. It's more of like the book getting published because of fans of this particular type of fan fiction and not because the story is actually very well written. I don't know, maybe that's unfair to say because I think some people really do like this, and maybe the fan fiction aspect of it is huge, like a huge part of it for them, but I don't know, it was just like meh, right down the middle. It was fine, but it wasn't like that enjoyable, I guess. It was okay. It was right down the middle. So I ended up giving this one just 3 stars, which 3 stars is not bad. I definitely had a fine time. It wasn't like I disliked it at all. There were just a couple parts where I was like, a little creepy, a little odd, but other than that, not huge issues or anything. So it was like, yeah, it was like just okay. Next, I read Third Shift Society by Meredith Moriarty, and this is a webtoon that got published into a graphic novel. And I picked this up from the library on a whim because I really loved the cover and I thought it looked interesting, and I was kind of missing the fall season. It's kind of funny that this is my reading from May of this year, but I actually have a lot of books that really fit the spooky season going on. So that's kind of fun. Third Shift Society is about a girl named Ellie who discovers very early on in the book that monsters and paranormal things are real, and she is needing a job, and she gets sucked into becoming partners with this man named Ichabod, who is a paranormal detective and has a jack-o'-lantern for a head. If you only like graphic novels that have like an overarching storyline, you may not like this one because it is very serialized. Seeing as it came as a webtoon first, it just makes sense that it's little snippets of stories within the graphic novel, and I think that a lot of the negative reviews that I saw were complaining about that kind of structure, but I actually really loved that aspect of it. I thought it was fun to get to see little stories that had their own small arcs. It almost felt more like a TV show. It never really got overly serious, but it still had depth to it, and it was fun to get to see Ellie and Ichabod's world with the different paranormal mysteries without it needing to be this large overarching story. I never feel like I really get to connect with stories in graphic novel form anyway, just because they're so short, and I didn't mind a graphic novel leaning into just a serialized format. I thought the art style was really wonderful and the humor wasn't really cringe or anything. I thought the relationship between Ellie and Ichabod was really fun. I thought that it might turn romantic, but it actually seemed like maybe they were introducing a romantic interest for Ellie in the vampire friend that Ichabod has, and I thought that was pretty sweet as well. This doesn't have like a huge reader base that I could find on Goodreads at least, and so I doubt any of you have read this, but if you have, I want to know, am I the only one that thought Ichabod was supposed to be kind of attractive? Like, I know he has a pumpkin for a head, but still, I kind of thought he was supposed to be like the heartthrob of the story. I don't know. So that is Third Shift Society. I really liked that one. I did end up giving it 4 stars, and I'm looking forward to the next one coming out. There's going to be, I don't know if you would call it a sequel because, again, it is very serialized, but there is a second volume coming out, and I'm pretty excited about that. Up next, I have a duology, one of which is a reread, and the other one is a new read for me. I will probably be flipping back and forth between the last spread and this one because I wanted to make sure that I had enough blue stickers to fit both spreads. So technically my last 2 spreads are not actually finished, so it'll be kind of back and forth, like I said. So the next book that I read in May was a reread, like I mentioned, and it is All the Stars and Teeth by Adeline Grace. This is the same author that wrote the Belladonna trilogy, which I absolutely love, and this is her debut novel, I believe. All the Stars and Teeth is set in a kingdom where there are different types of magic, but the citizens of the kingdom can only possess one type of magic each. They are not allowed to practice more than one. We are following the princess of this kingdom named Amora, and she practices soul magic. The members of her family are the only ones that are allowed to practice soul magic because, according to their history, it is a burden that the monarchy has committed to taking on as a sacrifice for their people. At the beginning of the book, Amora is about to perform the ceremony that allows her to prove herself to her kingdom that she is fit to rule. And historically, if this demonstration fails, then the most likely scenario is that the heir is executed and the kingdom goes to the next in line. There are some exceptions to the rule, but Amora's demonstration does go wrong and she decides to escape with a pirate named Bastion who promises that he has some kind of knowledge that has been hidden from the people, and if she comes with him, they can save the kingdom from total destruction and she would still be able to prove herself worthy of the crown. Okay, so there's a few things that I want to say about this book. First, I loved it. Second, one of the fun facts about Adeline Grace that is in the cover flap of this book is that she worked as an intern at Nickelodeon on The Legend of Korra, which is sort of the sequel series to The Last Airbender, and I have to say that there are some similarities, okay? But ignoring that, this is an incredible YA fantasy novel, in my opinion. And make no mistake, this is a pirate novel. Amora is obsessed with the ocean. She's obsessed with sailing and exploration and just being on the water. And the fact that she teams up with a pirate that also feels the same is just a perfect pirate novel. I was on the hunt for pirate books a few years ago, and this one came into my possession through that. This was way before I discovered Belladonna, so I was not buying this because of the author necessarily. So this was a very organic find for me. I felt like Amora was a really fun character to read from, and her connection with Bastion is just top notch in my opinion, especially in the YA space. I think that she is complex and smart and ruthless. Her magic is very scary and she handles it with a steady hand and no fear or queasiness, and it's very fun to read a character like that. At the beginning of the story, Amora is also betrothed to a character named Ferric, and he follows them and forces his way onto the ship with them and goes on their adventure. And I was really worried that he was going to be this annoying character and force this love triangle thing that I really dislike, but instead it really just turned out to be more of a found family dynamic at the end of the book, especially after they bring on a new character in the middle, and I just loved that aspect of it. I think the found family was perfectly written, and this is just one of my favorite fantasy novels in the YA space, and I gave it 5 stars both times that I read it. Unfortunately, I won't be as complimentary about the sequel to All the Stars and Teeth. The second book in the duology is called All the Tides of Fate, and I read it directly after reading this book. In All the Tides of Fate, the dynamics have changed quite a bit, and Amora is having to navigate a new set of responsibilities, and I just didn't love the direction that the author took Amora's character. She became very immature and sneaky and lying to her friends that I felt she had such a great relationship in the last book with. She becomes a very different version of herself and, in my opinion, backslides into a worse version of herself. Everything that I liked about her kind of just dissipated with the way that the last book ended. I think that could be realistic, but it was pretty frustrating to read when I knew that if she would just tell the truth to her friends, that they would be on board with helping her, but instead she lies to them and holds secrets and manipulates them to basically do her bidding. And I could just see this looming downfall of her plan, which did eventually come. And it was just not fun or satisfying to read. It was a lot of suffering over the choices that this character made, which felt out of character for her anyway. I hated where the author took Amora and Bastion's relationship as well. It felt like Amora stopped trusting him and became resentful, and in an attempt to be more independent, she just isolated herself, which maybe also is realistic, but again, just wasn't enjoyable to read. I think the problem they were facing in the story was enough of a crux for the story to focus on without there also being secrets and lying and internal turmoil that our main character was facing. I wish that it had been turmoil that she dealt with outwardly and with the help of her friends, and simultaneously they're trying to solve a problem together and bonding that way instead of this isolating self-sabotage, essentially. And the ending just felt like it didn't need to happen that way either, and was also really frustrating to read. Regardless, Adeline Grace's writing is still really beautiful, and this was obviously just a taste of how incredible her writing would become, because after this, the Belladonna trilogy came out, and those are all 5-star books for me. So, 1 out of 5 being a 3-star is not so bad for me. All the Tides of Fate did get a 3-star from me. It was just fine. I'm never going to read it again, and I do wish that it didn't exist in its current form, but, that's okay. You probably saw me flip back and forth between the 2 spreads. I was just making sure that I had enough blue and pink stickers to span both spreads. And so I added the finishing touches to this spread now and added some washi tape and things like that. And then I'm just gonna, fill out the rest. I used this really beautiful mermaid sticker from Marigo Nasuli art. I thought it fit perfectly with the blue and pink. Again, it's so strange that I have 2 spreads in a row that are blue and pink, and then there's a little bit of orange on the Third Shift Society page, but I was surprised by the amount of blue and pink going on in these first 2 spreads. So after this, though, we will move on into different color themes for sure. The next book, which is number 5 in May, is the one that I have so many things to say about. This is Happy Medium by Sarah Adler. So this book I happened upon when I was just browsing the bookstore with my husband, and I walked through the romance section and I found this adorable cartoon cover, and I was like, what is this, and why does it have so many elements that look right up my alley? So I picked it up and I flipped it over and I read the back, and I was like, I must read this. Forget everything else on my TBR. This is taking priority. So I decided to put a hold on it for the library because I have so many unread books on my shelf that I was just like, let me get it from the library. Let me check myself. I was about to buy it right away, but my husband was like, maybe don't. Maybe just get it from the library and see if you like it. And I was like, okay, good plan. As soon as I got my hold in, I picked it up and read it immediately. I think the most effective way to get you in the mindset that I was in when I read this book is to read you the synopsis from Goodreads, which I'm hoping is the same as the synopsis on the back of the book, because that's what I read in store, which convinced me to read this book. Okay, I'm gonna read it to you really quick. Fake spirit medium Gretchen Acorn is happy to help when her best, wealthiest client hires her to investigate the unexplained phenomena preventing the sale of her bridge partner's struggling goat farm. Gretchen may be a fraud, but she'd like to think that she's a beneficent one. So if cleansing the property will help a nice old man finally retire and put some much needed cash in her pockets at the same time, who is she to say no? Of course, it turns out said bridge partner is not the kindly AARP member Gretchen imagined. Charlie Waybill is young, hot as hell, and extremely unconvinced that Gretchen can communicate with the dead. Which, fair. Except, to her surprise, Gretchen finds herself face to face with the very real, very chatty ghost that's been wreaking havoc during every open house. And he wants her to help ensure Charlie avoids the same family curse that had Everett haunting Gilded Creek since the 1920s. So the synopsis goes on from there, but that was basically all I needed to convince me to read this book. We have a goat farm. We have a hot farmer. We have a ghost. We have a woman who's pretending to be a medium, but then actually becomes a medium. Like she can talk to the spirit that's there and no one else can see him. There is not a better synopsis for a book for me. So let me tell you, when I got this book from the library and I read this thing in one day, the disappointment that I felt is unmatched, I have to say. and I wrote out my thoughts, and I'm going to tell you about them now. So again, Happy Medium is about a girl named Gretchen Acorn, which I will come back to this, who was raised by her con artist father. And as an adult, she is estranged from her father, but she continues to use his teachings to con others. We are told this, we do not get to see it. She pretends to be a medium, talking to her clients' dead relatives to con money out of grieving people. She does have a rule that she does not leave anyone worse off than when they came to her, so she uses her skills to basically help people grieve and eventually find closure. We are told this, we do not get to see it. She is a very bad person because she cons people. And we are told this, but we do not get to see it. So you're seeing a pattern here, right? Gretchen is telling us a lot of things about herself, and we are seeing basically none of it. We jump into the story pretty much at the point where her client comes to ask her for help with this job. And that's pretty much it. So we don't get any scenes at the beginning of the book seeing Gretchen be a bad person. And yet we are supposed to spend basically the first half, if not more, of this book convinced that Gretchen is a horrible human being. Her father never comes into play once in this story. He calls her once and she doesn't answer. And she is also very afraid that he will come and find her wherever she is. But other than that, there is no reason that her father should even be mentioned in this story. He could have died and it wouldn't have mattered. Her name is actually Gretchen Acorn, but to separate herself from her father, she changed it to Acorn, which when reading the book just came across so stupid. It is a dumb change. It's not far enough away from her father's name that it would protect her or save her from him at all. She could have changed it literally to anything. She could have been Gretchen Smith, but instead it's Gretchen Acorn, like the nut. And the love interest actually calls her Acorn, like many, many, many times in the book. And it is so odd. He calls her that as if it's her first name. Like he's like, hey, Acorn. I was so excited for the ghost aspect of this. And he seemed so adorable and fun on the front cover. Like he's a little cartoon ghost. So I was expecting a cute, silly ghost. Instead, he is the most annoying, gross character that I have ever been asked to like in a book. I wanted him gone so bad. He was this 1920s old-fashioned creepy dude. I think he asked her to watch if he could watch her change, and like, I don't know, there was just a lot that was like, could he not have just been a cute little Casper style ghost? Why did he have to be this creepy 1920s ghost? I don't know. It was very similar, honestly, to the cat character in Go Hex Yourself. Like, why did they have to be creepy? I don't understand. The love interest genuinely seems to hate her, like wholeheartedly despise her, and he is seemingly just disgusted by her existence, and he is so insulting towards her. There is no growth from that to being romantically or even sexually interested in her. It is from 0 to 100. And honestly, some of the stuff that he says to her, I would be so offended if I were her. And it's just, she just takes it in stride. She's like, yep, I'm a bad person. You know, you're right. I'm a horrible person. He has never met this woman in his life, and he is insulting her and her morals and her business and everything about her, and he knows nothing about her, and she knows that she's lying to people about being a medium, but he doesn't. I mean, he's assuming that she is, but he's just being a horrible, mean person. And so it was just really hard to root for them at all. However, all of that stuff aside, this probably would have been just fine. But there is a scene in this book that I have to tell you about. I literally want to tell everyone in my life about this scene if it wasn't so gross. But I'm just going to share it here on the internet for all of you to enjoy. So buckle in, because maybe you all will tell me that I am being way over the top, judgmental, and being grossed out for no reason. But the full-bodied guttural ick that I experienced is yet to be, and will most likely never in my lifetime be matched. She finds in the attic of the barn, I think, which is already kind of gross, being stored in a box for decades, she finds a sweater that this man knitted for his grandfather. So I want to repeat that. This is for his grandfather, who is dead. She decides to take it without him knowing and sleep in it every night. Later in the novel, in her bedroom, they begin to get intimate, and she reaches to remove the dead grandpa's sweater from her body, and he grabs her arm and he says, and I quote from this book, I swear to you, he says, "No, leave it on." And then this man proceeds to tie her to the bedpost using the sleeves of the sweater that he knitted for his dead grandfather. and has intercourse with this woman that he has hated for the entirety of this book. I'm telling you, if this happened to me, I would scream and gag and run out of that house, get in my car, drive away, and never look back. You cannot convince me that this man does not have sexual fantasies about his grandfather. You will not convince me of this. I would not want to live in a world where this man exists. It is so gross. As soon as this scene happened, I told my husband immediately. I was like, I have to tell you about this. This is horrifying. So that's all. This book is a 1 star. I'm telling you, the grandpa sweater scene will live in my brain for the rest of my life. And I'm devastated about that. Let's move on. I am so sorry to anyone and everyone who liked this book, and to the author, Sarah, you are diabolical for this. Okay, like I said, moving on. The next book that I read was another graphic novel. This is The Baker and the Bard by Fern Hott. This little graphic novel is about Juniper, who apprentices at the local bakery, and Hadley, who plays music at the local inn. Hadley also has a very cute little pet snake named Fern. And at the beginning of the book, a stranger places an unusual order at the bakery. And so Hadley, Juniper, and Fern set out on this little journey to forage for mushrooms that are needed to make the pastries for this order. It's essentially an adventure story. Juniper and Hadley encounter a mystery that they decide to help solve. There's something eating the local farmers' crops, and they decide to figure out what that is. And along the way, they run into new friends and little creatures, and that's essentially the entire story. I thought this was so cute. I usually don't end up rating graphic novels because I find that I rarely have any thoughts at all about them. They never feel like they hold enough substance for me to have really strong opinions about them, but the 2 that I read this month were really the exception. I genuinely enjoyed the story and the characters of this book. The art was a bonus because it was absolutely beautiful. I read this from the library, but I might want to grab a copy of my own because the cover is gorgeous and I just really liked the art. I don't have much else to say, honestly, but I did end up rating this 5 stars. If you are a fan of the Tea Dragon Society, you would probably really like this graphic novel. My second to last book for May was One Night on the Island by Josie Silver. This is a romance novel that I also picked up from the library. I must have really been on a library kick this month. This is following Cleo and Mac, who both booked an inn in a small town on a remote Irish island at the same time. Mac is an American, but his grandmother is from this town, and Cleo has no connection to the town, but she booked this trip for her job as a columnist, and she's writing an article about the experience of turning 30 while she's single. They have a very clear and well-written dislike for each other based on the fact that they both feel like the other person doesn't have a better reason to be in the inn than they do, and so they're both trying to get the other one to leave. The irritation that they had with each other felt really realistic, and it gave a fun angst to the romantic relationship. I also really liked their respect for each other's professions. Mac is a photographer, and it seems like Cleo really respects his craft, while Mac seems to respect her writing job, and eventually they both respect each other's reason for being there. There are aspects of this book that are very silly and fun, but then also some really serious and deep topics, and you get to see Cleo and Mac really bond over both aspects. They talk about a lot of these more serious topics, but they also become friends along the way and start acting goofy and laughing with each other. And I just really enjoyed both aspects of it. I actually really loved the 30th birthday part of this story. I was worried that it would be very cliche, woman turning 30 and terrified of it situation, but instead it turned out to be a really beautiful, self-searching sort of coming of age type of story, even though the coming of age was coming of the age of 30, but it was really relatable as someone who is turning 30 soon, and I'm not really worried about it, but it was really beautiful to read about Cleo's experience and the things going on in her mind with stepping into a new decade of her life and sort of where her anxieties were coming from. It was really beautiful to read about. She conducts a ceremony for herself alone on the beach towards the end of the book, and it is truly such a beautiful scene, and I was really caught off guard by how emotional that it made me. And this book was actually completely my inspiration to plan a special trip for my husband's 30th birthday this year, and that turned out to be such a wonderful experience and a special thing for both of us to get to do together. So yeah, that's kind of funny. A little romance novel inspired me to plan a trip for my husband's birthday, but it definitely did. Overall, this was a really solid 4.5-star romance for me. I am using 2 cottagecore style sheets from Artimation Co. to decorate both sides of this spread. I just decided to go kind of cottagecore for both ends of it, and I really like the way it blended everything together. Even though the two books are quite different in theming, I think it still ended up looking pretty good. So I used those cottagecore stickers and some craft paper along with the green polka dot paper from Journal Say, and then some white gridded washi tape from Amazon. And then this washi tape with the animals playing instruments I think is from Temu. I just got these wooden stamps from Notebook Therapy, and they're in this really cute, like, handwritten font. It basically is the Notebook Therapy font, and they release them in stamps. And so I picked that up from Notebook Therapy. I've never ordered from them before, but I got a couple of things from them, and I'm excited to use all of them. But the wooden stamps are the first thing I used, and I just used some green distress ink to stamp the letters. And then for the Baker and the Bard, I didn't have a lot to write, so I just used these big letter stickers that I made myself. I just printed a bunch of letters onto craft sticker paper and cut them out with my hand, like with my scissors. I didn't use my sticker cutter for this. And so I just kind of like fussy cut around them with my scissors and then stuck them on the paper. And then I'm going to write my reviews, and we'll be all good with my second to last spread for May. Last but not least, my final book for May was Murder Your Employer by Rupert Holmes. This is one of the most unique books that I have ever read. It claims to be a diabolical thriller with a killer concept. This is a really difficult book to explain the concept of. It's about a school called the McMaster Conservatory for the Applied Arts, which is dedicated to the art of murder, where students study how best to, quote, delete their most deserving victim. It's told as if it's a textbook for the students of the school, but then the textbook is teaching lessons through narrative, so it's still laid out more or less like a novel. That's pretty much all I can say without having you go into it with too much information. I pretty much went into this blind, except for knowing that it was about a school for murder, and I think that's all you really need to know, in my opinion. I am so shocked by this book. The wordplay, the dark themes explored through humor, and overall wittiness of this book was such an absolute joy to read. I was expecting a little bit of a gimmicky experience, given the fact that the synopsis on the flap very much sets the tone as a humorous one, despite the dark nature of the topic. So I expected to maybe get a little exhausted with the shtick and just want the story itself. But I was really wrong. I feel like I got the shtick and the story, and I loved every bit of it. So much so that I looked online immediately after finishing this to see if there would be a sequel, and it says that there's already one in the works, which I am so pumped about. The narrative aspect focuses on 3 past students at McMaster's, following them from their backstory and introduction to the school all the way to their eventual, quote, graduation. I was so invested in all 3 students and their purpose being at McMaster's, as well as whether or not they would actually succeed in what the school calls their thesis, which would be the murder that they wish to commit. I love that the foreword of the textbook gives you some indication of what will happen, but it's enough to hold you through the whole book, but it's not so much that anything gets ruined. This book has so much fun with wordplay and puns and niche lingo that I just adored the moments when it would elicit a little smile on my face while I was reading. There are so many little twists and turns that I literally never knew who or what to trust throughout the entire book. Anytime something would go down a certain path, I just kept thinking, nope, this has to be a trick or misdirect, which was such a blast, and it caused me to just fly through this book. There were drawings in the physical copy, which just added such a wonderful touch to this already beautiful hardcover. And the audiobook is also perfect. I really loved listening in combination with reading physically. I believe the audiobook is read by Neil Patrick Harris, and I found that not too distracting, so that's good. I definitely think that this book has its fair share of haters, but it was probably one of my favorite books of the year so far, and maybe could be one of my favorites throughout. So I would argue that this is relatively a perfect book, in my opinion. Obviously, I gave Murder Your Employer 5 stars. For this spread, I used some black and red origami paper from Muji, and I used this really cool, like, I don't know, devil themed sticker sheet from Mushy Works, and I just felt like it matched this cover so well, and it gave like a really fun, playful vibe to the overall spread. So I was just really happy with how this one turned out, and I can tell now looking back that I really had a thing for putting a big blob of paper and stickers right in the middle of my spreads. I did that in like every single one this month almost. But you know, I think it looks pretty good. So what can I say? And that, my friends, is everything that I read in the month of May. Thank you so much for watching through this entire video. If you're hearing me right now, I really appreciate you, especially through 8 books. Wow. And especially the variety that we got this month. I think I probably read one of my favorite books and one of my least favorite books of the year in May. So thank you so much for listening to me rant and also rave. I appreciate it. Let me know if you read any of these books and if you felt the same or different than me. I love chatting books with you all, and let me know based on my likes and dislikes that you've seen if you have any recommendations. But I had a lot of fun making this video. I had a lot of fun doing my May spreads, and so I'm hoping June, July, August, all of those coming up are going to be really fun too, and I hope to get those out to you soon. So I will see you next time. Bye.